back to the Crafty Meraki YouTube channel. This is Marla, and today I'm using the Sakura Blossom stencil. This is a 5-piece stencil set. Each of the stencils are numbered in the upper right-hand corner, and then there are layering guides that show you where you can align your paper. When I'm using the layering stencils by themselves, I like to use a stamp positioning tool because I find that that's like the quickest and easiest alignment. But if those registration marks help you, then that they are there for that. So here you can see that the Sakura Blossom is a little bit larger than this A2 size vertical card base, so I'm just going to align it where I would like it. I'll add a little bit of tape to the back to just help hold it in place. And then, of course, that stamp wheel mat, which is a sticky mat, is going to help as well. So we're going to start with some Pink Fresh Studio inks. I started with Cherry Blossom, which is going to be the first layer. When you're working with layering stencils, it's always best to use your lightest color first, and then your mid-tone second, and your darkest 1/3. So there's 3 layers to this Sakura Blossom. The final layer has most of the detail in it, so kind of like the centers of the flowers and just adding the separation of the petals, and so that's going to be my darkest color. So I'm just using a small blending brush, and then I'm going to stencil number 2, and you can see I'm just aligning it in that lower right-hand corner. It's going to align perfectly every time if you do it this way. Now, I'm going to show you a second card where I'm actually going to be doing a little bit of hot foiling with the press plate. And because I do die cut out the blossom, and because I am using the hot foil plate, I do have to make a little bit of adjustment with how I align my stencils each time, but I can assure you that these are some of the easiest stencils that I've ever had that just align beautifully. So for my second layer, I'm using a color called Peony. And you can see that we have 2 different color cherry blossoms, and then this is that detailed layer I was talking about, and we're going to use Mulberry Bush for that. And then for the 2 layers for my stem of the cherry blossom, I'm going to start with my lightest color, which is going to be Pink Fresh Studios Dough. And then the detail will be added with the gathered twigs. So same process, just adding that stencil to the lower right-hand corner for perfect alignment. And then we're just going to go ahead and use one of those blending brushes to add the color to the stem. Today we're creating 3 different cards. I just wanted to show you different ways that you can use some of the products from Crafty Meraki. I really like products that are super versatile, and I think that their Press-Tacular plates are super versatile because not only can you do a letterpress, but you can also hot foil, which is what I'm going to be showing you in the next card. And then I'm also using one of their dies, and one of their background dies. I'm going to use that to do some hot foiling as well. I like to get the most out of my time when I'm creating cards, and so I'm just going to show you how I was able to do that and quickly get these 3 cards put together. So this is that final detailed layer that I'm adding that gathered twigs to, and once I get this on, we are going to use the coordinating die, which is super easy to align. And there's a look at the stenciling for the Sakura Blossom only. So we don't have any of the detail that we'll get with the press plate, but it still does create a beautiful floral if you're looking for, you don't have a foiling system or a better press system, then the stencil works beautifully. So I'm just going to add a little bit of tape, and then I'll quickly run this through my die cutting system once I get this aligned. And all of the card designs are going to be very similar. So I'm going to remove our cherry blossom or the Sakura Blossom, and you can see that that die cuts beautifully. It die cuts all of the centers out of the flowers. Now, this is the Gilded Greetings from Crafty Meraki. These are the EAPs, so these are toner sheets that you can use with a laminator or a mink foiling system. I do have the coordinating dies right here. I like to do my die cutting first because I can use different colors of foil for each of the greetings. I'm going to try to determine which sentiment is going to fit best on my card. So I'm just going to audition a couple different sentiments, and then I'll bring in some toner foil in gold. So I have Grateful, which I believe is the one that I end up going with. And then I have Congrats. Maybe I go with Congrats. I can't remember. I don't have the cards with me right now. But let's see here. And then I tried the Hello, and I thought the Hello was just a little bit small. So I'm going to set that one aside, and we are going to foil the Congrats and the Grateful, and then I'll determine which one to use. Now, I am just using a piece of copier paper and my Mink machine, but I wanted to make sure that it stayed in place. When you're doing toner foiling, then you want the pretty side to be facing upward. And so I'm just cutting off a piece of that gold foil. The sentiments are going to slip, so I'm going to bring in a piece of scrap paper, and I'm just going to add a little bit of tape runner to the back of each of the sentiments to hold it in place, and this will just make my foiling a little bit easier. So this is a little trick that you can use when you're doing some hot foiling and you have individual sentiments. Now, if you're doing the whole sheet in the gold, then you certainly wouldn't have to do that. But like I said, I like to just cut out a whole sheet and then have them to either use as their black or to use different colors of hot foil with them. So this is the mini Mink machine, and I find that these are I mean, there is never a fail with it. These always foil beautifully. So they are a quality product. And let's take a look here. See how beautiful that foiled? Now, if you do use tape on the back, you have to be a little bit careful when you're lifting it off. One of the tricks, if it's not coming up, these ones end up coming up easy enough, but if you have an issue with it coming off of the scrap piece of paper, all you need to do is take your heat tool and just kind of heat the back of it a little bit. It'll melt that tape, and then they'll just come off easy. So I'm going to do some auditioning. I have a white 4¼ by 5½ inch piece of cardstock, and I'm just going to addition and see which sentiment I'm going to use. And then I'm going to add some 1/8 inch foam tape to the back of this. I always love dimension for the most part on my cards. So I'm going to use this 1/8 inch tape from scrapbook.com. I find that it's one of the thinnest ones, super easy to use. Because I do have to do some curves for those twigs, I did remove the backing paper before I started adding it to my Sakura Blossom, just to make sure when you take the tape backing off of it, then it does tend to move and manipulate a little bit easier. So I have the Marrakesh Mosaic. I wanted to add a little bit of detail to that white piece of cardstock. So I ran it through my die cutting machine using that rubber mat. And what that does is, instead of cutting out all of the pieces, it gives us a nice embossed background. And so I have a little bit of detail. It's still going to be clean and simple, but I did use that background die to do a little bit of embossing, dry embossing with that for a little bit more detail in the back. So I'm going to add this to an A2 top folding card base, and I'll use the corner of my Misty to help me align that. I liked top folding card bases, so I take an what is it? 8½ by 11 piece of cardstock, and on the 8½ inch side, I do cut it down the center at 4¼ and then I use my scoreboard to score at 5.5 inches, and that will give me a top folding card base. So I'm going to add a little bit of glue just for some reinforcement because I did take the backing off of the tape, and I want to make sure that this is going to stay in place nicely. So I'm just going to align this onto my card panel. And then I did add a little bit of that tape to the back of my sentiment. You can see that the largest letter on the left-hand side, so the capital letter, does not have any foam tape because the Sakura Blossom does, and this is going to overlap. I didn't add it to the C for the congrats. And so that is our first card. Now, this time we are going to be doing some hot foiling, and I'm going to hot foil 2 of these Sakura blossoms, and then I'll use the coordinating stencil with the hot foiling. So I have my glimmer machine, and I like to put mine on for about 1.5 minutes. You're going to add the foil pretty side down, and then I'm going to take my card panel. I like to use hammer mill paper for my hot foiling. I seem to get perfect foiling every time with this. And then because I'm using the foil press by Gemini, I am using the foil press foil because I found that it works perfectly. So we ran this through our die cutting machine, and you can see that I have a perfect impression. And then I used the coordinating stencils. This time I added begonia, which is a little bit more of a redder color to get a different variation in the Sakura Blossom colors. And I have that hot foiling in the background, and I did a second one the exact same way off camera. So I'm going to use my coordinating stencil. And as I mentioned before, you can see that it does cut out the centers, not just the outline of the blossom, which really adds a lot of detail. And now you can see that shine from the foiling. So you do get a little bit different of a look. This time we're going to be doing some hot foiling with the Marrakesh Mosaic. Pretty side of the foil is going down. I'm going to add my cardstock over the top of this. And then when everything is heated up, again, I heat mine up for about 1.5 minutes. Once everything is heated up, then I will add the top plate and we will run it through my Gemini Junior. And we'll lift this up. And you can see that I'm going to get a beautiful, delicate background. So see how pretty that is? Really detailed. But now I have that piece of hot foil. So we want to work smarter, not harder. I'm using a Pink Fresh Studio solid plate. And I'm adding that foil that just came off of that card panel face side down on that solid plate. Again, I have a piece of 4.25 by 5.5 inch hammer mill cardstock. We have heated this one up. I like to heat the solid plate for about 2 minutes, and then watch how perfect this is. I mean, these dies foil beautifully. This is perfect. There is not one blemish on this panel. It's absolutely beautiful. So now I'm going to put these 2 cards together off camera. I just wanted to show you how you can get more use out of your background dies. And I'm going to add foam tape to the one on the left. So here's our first card that we created, and I created that one on camera, but for the second one, it's going to be the white card panel with that Marrakesh hot foil. I added the happy birthday sentiment from Crafty Meraki, added foam tape to the back of the Sakura blossom, and then I changed the angle of the blossom and did not add any dimensional tape to this one. So I want to thank you so much for joining me. I hope this video was helpful. Until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks for watching.